This is Glambition Radio, episode number 240 with Dao Jenson, founder and CEO of Kaizen Technology Partners. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. You know, I love when incredibly successful business women find along the way their big mission. And I love sharing the order that these things happen because sometimes it's a bit unexpected. Many women feel they need to start their career or business with some type of big vision, right? And then the success comes from there. And sometimes that happens. That was not my story. I was basically, I found myself unemployable. Generally don't like authority. Working for myself was perfect. I knew I had some talent. I knew I could figure some things out. And I want to bank some coin, And that's how working for myself started. Along the way, I tapped into my purpose. Along the way, I was revealed a vision. And I want to say that because, ladies, there's no shame in just wanting to be ambitious. In fact, our recent guest, Shelley Archambault, calls it unapologetically ambitious. By the way, her book was just named one of the top business books of the year by Fortune. So I want to give her a shout out. Congrats, Shelley. But my guest today, Dao Jenson, is such a great example of someone who set out to be success here in America, came from immigrant parents. They had a plan that she was going to have this career in legal. Along the way, though, she really fell in love with tech, went into a sales career, and then decided to start her own firm. That was Kaizen Technology Partners in San Francisco. It was created in 2013, the same year my twins were born, actually. They were born at the same time. And this was the first 100% female minority-owned company that was born in the cloud. And she helps Fortune 500 enterprise clients strategize and optimize their cloud platforms and tech solutions. That's all cool enough, but it was Dao's mission to close our country's educational gap via technology that I found most interesting and incredibly relevant this year. You're probably aware that in many areas of the United States, of our own country, there is still disparate inequality in the educational gap, and then now this tech gap. And so the government's response to the pandemic this year has really varied in different areas, and it has affected different populations differently. So on one hand, you have kids still going to private school in person right now, right? But on the flip side, you have children in some areas sent home. And not only do they maybe not have the tech, but they may not even have internet connection. So this was a great discussion today on how do we address this going forward. And you know what this year has revealed in a pain in the ass way? This year has brought to the surface anything we were kind of tolerating and systems that were kind of chugging along, but we didn't really look too deeply at it. And man, everything's coming up to be looked at. And this is a great example of that. So you're going to love her story. You're going to love her mission. And my favorite part of the interview, I have to share, is how she met, with the love of her life during COVID. So hang in there for that one. Quick shout out to 2 reviews my team pulled for me from Apple Podcasts. The first is from Ashton Keefe. She says, "Thank you. I've been the biggest fan of you and this podcast for years. Allie, you interview the most amazing, inspiring women, some of which I'm honored to know in real life. Keep up the fabulous work. Here's to 2021. And then the next is MBL with Virginia, up leveling. Oh, she's from Canada. And she says, I have been listening to Glambition for close to 5 years since I started my 2 businesses. I love the conversations. They are perfect for anyone that's ambitious and ready to take on the new, more feminine ways of running a business. I've made it a goal to one day to be able to meet and work with Allie. She's a true leader and mentor in today's business world. Thank you so much for taking a minute to leave us a review. It means so much to me because it keeps the show high in the rankings. It helps other women discover this show and get away from, there's a lot of BS, babe, boss, girl, badass shows out there, right? We are a bit of a different breed. Fun name, but an intelligent conversation. Let's help other women raise the bar and find this show to put in their mix. So please, we so appreciate it. And we will reward you, by the way. On a regular basis, we'll pop up and do some surprise giveaways for not just a drawing, for everyone who has left us a review, who puts in for our giveaway. We will send you a special gift. So if you want to take the time to do it now, we so appreciate it, and we will reward you later. A reminder that our show today is sponsored by The Trust, the private premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. We've had a great, solid start in the strange year of 2020. We are raising the bar for 2021. I just hosted a private informational call this week that if you're hearing this for the first time, you missed that private call. But if you are running a business that is in the 7 or 8 figure range, and you're thinking, you know what, I'd like to up the bar for my networks next year and go to some specifically different types of events with incredible business women and entrepreneurs, then have a look at jointhetrust.org. My team would be happy to talk with you personally. They can walk you through everything that's coming up for next year, the exciting events we have online, offline, and you can decide if it's a great fit for you and your goals. Just go to jointhetrust.org. There's more details there, and to request a brief informational interview. Now, get ready for a great conversation with an amazing businesswoman, Dao Jenson. Dao, I would like to know where you are right now.
Hi, Allie. Yes, I'm in beautiful San Francisco, California, on the southwest side, overlooking the ocean from my window.
And in the pre-chat, I was blown away to hear you have 4 kids, 2 still at home.
Yes.
Right. How has this year been for you?
Luckily, my children are a little older than yours and others, so it's been less of a hands-on involvement with their education during COVID, being at home studying since March. But it's, the spring was really disappointing because they got very little education and mostly a pass-fail grade instead. I think you learn a lot about your children. You learn about yourself and about your school district on how they're handling the change in situation in such a fast pace.
Yeah, I think for me this year was really waking up to a few things that I was, like even the school systems, yes, but also like local government. Suddenly you start paying attention to everything, right? Because when things are chugging along normally, you don't really think about it. And this really was a wake-up call. And I think, I'm going to guess, quite affirming for your mission that you've taken on.
It is, and it's actually our mission that we came into this was almost serendipitous because it wasn't something that was a mission last year, to be honest.
Yeah. Can we go back to a bit about the evolution of Dao and your career and kind of how this all came about, and then we'll dig in a little deeper?
Sure. I'll try to give you a very high level view, and then we can dig deeper if you have questions on it instead of going for too long. But I was born in Minnesota, an immigrant refugee from Vietnam. When I came over, I was 4 years old to a family of 7 kids. My parents were entrepreneurs and had a restaurant. I thought I would be a lawyer, as my parents had taught me to do. And instead, I actually got pregnant at 19, being 2 years early in college, and met my husband, who was 4 years older. Changed my career to finance, moved to Chicago, realized that in a tech company, I didn't know what they did, and wanted to learn sales in order to become a CFO one day instead of just sitting in finance for the same time period. And I ended up loving it. I have done tech sales for over 25 years now and went from large companies to international sales in London to California to going to small companies and then starting my own.
Okay, so tech sales, that would be corporate sales, right? Like B2B?
Yes. B2B software and hardware, but mostly software and professional services. Yes,
Okay.
to large corporations like eBay. I sold to Salesforce.com in 2006 when Benioff was still involved with negotiating with us, sales reps.
That's amazing. What a great experience. And during like the heyday of everything, when did you get the idea to start your own firm?
I think a lot of it started after my divorce. I had really wanted to become more risk, and I wanted to, take on more risk and learn more. When I went to a smaller software organization thinking that I would have more opportunity on meritocracy versus, the good old boys club, one of my VP of sales, who was my boss, saw that I wasn't getting along with the decisions that were at the executive level, and he was giving me air cover. But he said, I really think you need to start looking. You have brought us the most number of six-figure deals, but they clearly don't understand your method or your brilliance of the various ideas you have. They don't want to know what you think about marketing. They don't want you to sell. And he said, maybe you should start your own thing. And that was in 2010, 2011.
Had you thought about it at all, though? Was that the first inkling?
Never.
Really?
No. I thought about maybe going to a startup, right? Like Pure Storage was brand new and they needed a head of sales. And I mean, as you know, they've recently IPO'd earlier this year or the year before. And, they were a nobody's stealth company at the time. So I had really wanted to join a startup and just be, and a CFO, head of sales, VP of sales, COO, executive or CEO one day, but never starting because my parents as immigrants worked really hard as entrepreneurs, and they really felt the American dream was going and having an education, marrying a doctor and getting a very stable salary instead of being a risk taker, which they had.
So this was a new concept for you.
It was very scary. And I have to give it up to my male friends who are very supportive more than female, because a lot of them were more entrepreneurial at that time that I knew than women. And he just said, maybe you should start your own thing. And then as I started looking at it and going to a smaller company just to see what my own thing would look like, right? Like I went to a $100 million company that was a value-added reseller and learned kind of some of their in and outs. It took a lot of friends and customers who were men and boyfriend to really say, look, you've got the connections. Why don't you jump and try it? You're not happy.
Yeah. Now you have to help those of us who may not be as familiar with your category. What is a cloud reseller company? Or can you explain more about what Kaizen does?
Sure. So what we do is we are a reseller and professional services organization to help people get off of their hardware and put everything in the cloud.
So there's still companies that have hardware.
A lot of companies who still have hardware.
Wow.
Yes, there's still a lot of companies. And if you really think about it, there will always be companies that have hardware. It'll be less of them. So your Amazon.com, your AWS, your Microsoft, Azure, your Google Drive, your Google, they all actually have their own data centers and hardware that provide you the cloud to put your stuff into.
Right.
So there's always going to be people who have hardware. It's just how many there will be using hardware to provide you the cloud services. Salesforce.com is a hybrid. They have their own hardware and they have cloud to provide you what their SaaS solution in the cloud.
So why did the world need another cloud reseller? What did you do differently or better?
That's great. I mean, in 2013, I'll tell you, it's not like your typical MBA schools that say, write your value proposition, write your 3-year plan. I just jumped into it. I saw, with the help of my customers, the cloud side of the house for Amazon, and they had not really broken out their AWS business compared to their Amazon.com business. I just saw a huge growth area. And I said, you know what, let's follow the growth. Knew no one over there for sales, nothing. What I realized going into there was no women selling cloud. I mean, it was men consulting firms. And so I chose it not because I thought someone needed another cloud reseller. I just wanted to go in and say, where's the gap? And that's where I spent my first 6 months, was going to talk to, the eBays, the PayPals, the Adobes who are my clients, and said, what are you missing from a cloud provider? And that's how I tailored my business over time.
Because you actually asked and listened, right?
Yeah. And maybe made less money in the beginning, but, I think it really came to help us become who we are today.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've won all these awards. I mean, you're one of the top companies in your space. And then the reason that especially I wanted to talk with you is when I read about what you were doing to align this mission you have around education equity. And that really piqued my interest, especially due to, current events this year and having children of my own, seeing a lot of the just mortifying divide that there is out there that this year really brought to the surface to be quite visible and quite obvious. Tell us all about this, how it started, what you're doing and things that we should be thinking about.
Yeah, so my company from a cloud perspective has a unique area capabilities of machine learning and data science, which means gathering a lot of data and crunching the numbers to make it some decisions that come out of it that make it easier for an executive to see. What we hadn't done was map that with Google Maps or Esri Maps. And so one of my past clients is now the CIO San Mateo said, hey, this is a problem I'm having right now. We have no idea where best to install Wi-Fi technology to the most impactful areas in our huge county, which is the second richest county in the state of California, with the funds that we got from the federal government. Is there something you could do to come in to project manage this? My team is small. We're focusing on health. We're focusing on all these things that COVID's forcing us to focus on that we don't have enough people for, and help us in areas that we wouldn't know how to do, such as graphing and creating a heat map of all the kids and where they're located that are socially, economically disadvantaged. So we can figure out from a picture where we could put the least number of Wi-Fis or the most numbers, depending on our budget, and impact the most number of kids. And that's how I got into it. I wasn't as aware because obviously, like you said, and you're in Scottsdale and you're pretty affluential. Our children probably have 2 laptops and, one iPhone, and they always have a backup device. But in the second richest county, it's a very diverse county where you've got East Palo Alto and you've got the hills of Pescadero Mountains that don't have internet.
Yeah.
Kids working on farms. And so when we got involved in this in June, just as a pilot, it grew so well with the superintendents in the area that they decided to divert more funds from the federal government to help us even add more school districts to help them in a 6-month period.
See, it's fascinating. I hadn't even thought of the Wi-Fi. I was thinking of immediately devices, for example, because my kids were in a charter school. I decided to pull them out. I knew this year was going to be wacky-dacky. I'm like, let's just do it ourselves this year. But they actually made a plea. The teacher said, we have a few students here who don't have iPads and don't have laptops. And so, it was a great chance for us to get some together we weren't using, the ones sitting around that they still work fine, but you're not using them. And so I was thinking devices. I hadn't even thought of internet itself. I hadn't even thought of that.
Right. You can have a device, but if you're getting kicked out every 5 minutes because you have unstable connection. A lot of libraries and schools were giving out hotspots so people could bring it to their homes. But 50 or 25% of them weren't working. Or, they were in a Verizon cell tower and they had bought, the school had bought them a AT&T hotspot. So how signal gets bad.
Yeah.
Even in Silicon Valley. So really making sure that these school districts and students were making the right decision on the type of internet access they have. I mean, obviously, this is still only the beginning of a foundation that you need to have for the children and families who need to now go online to see how their kids are doing more or participate with them in school. But it's really then you go to the next layer of digital equity, which is content. So that's what we're focused on for next quarter is.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, how once they have internet connection, you've got to handle it. If they have bad connection, how do you have backup plans, et cetera? How do you have connections in mountains like Pescadero? Well, SpaceX has created a product called Starlink that might be one of the best things that, to help people in rural areas that we're looking at for grants. But then you go content. You can go and do math, but the math that we learned is not conducive that was taught in school to the math they have to learn online. It might not be as interactive. There's not as much, pods for the children to really sit down when you're used to having 3-4 people and around a desk, right? So how do you have a different software, different curriculum, or even reasons for students to get together and want to leave their houses now and feel comfortable to do so in learning more content, or why even the teachers would want to go back, because there's a lot of COVID scared people out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So luckily in California, we have a little warmer weather than Minnesota, where I'm from, and we have parklets out in the restaurants. Why not build parklets at libraries so kids can get together in bigger outdoor pods to study?
What's a parklet? I don't think I know what a parklet is.
Outdoor building facility that's, half covered, that are right now, at least in San Francisco and the Bay Area, covering driveways and the roads. They're taking the parking lots, right? So the parklets, and they're making buildings into the parking parallel areas. So that you have.
Oh, right. For outdoor dining, like it's inside, but it's outside. And
So why
brilliant.
We're not doing that at our libraries or at our schools.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our next level of conversation with the superintendents, and really trying to put more communities or departments together within a county. In the past, what I'm learning is the county didn't always talk to the high school, and the superintendents and the libraries were all separated. Now they have to work together.
Do you think this year has been good for this, for your mission?
I do think it's really good. I think that it's opening people up to say, wow, we need to brainstorm and think how to do things differently.
Yeah. I mean, any system this year that has been outdated and we've been kind of tolerating, right, is just being blown up, and it ain't pretty sometimes. And education is one of them. And this is really interesting to look at this from a whole different angle with you in this conversation. And so not only the tech, but the content. And then now you're taking it to another level, what you just said, in how they're learning. So it's not even online, but it's online, and they're going to be able to still interact with other children so they don't become zombies. And I like in the, outdoor pods or whatever it is. So you're involved in all of this at some level?
I am. We're trying to start the conversation now that we've created some installs and they've been lit up, right? How do we, like libraries, they're a non-mandatory fund from the federal government. If people don't start going back to the libraries, I don't know how the libraries are going to survive against Audibles and Kindles and Google Classroom. So we need to help them survive.
Yeah. What can we do, Dao, as we're listening to this? And there may be there's women listening all over the world in many different types of regions. What should we be paying attention to or looking for if we want to start saying, okay, what is going on in my area and how can I help?
I think there's multiple areas you can look at, especially as a parent, it's easier because you're dealing with it. Many of us don't have kids either. And I think you need to look at the community and say, how is as a parent, my school district's addressing it, and where could I bring value or volunteer? We don't have to be the one doing the work, but we can be connecting our corporations and our communities and school districts together. It's kind of like bringing, the career day conversations. Right? But how do we do career day conversations when we're remote, or could get smaller groups together in a pod at a parklet? Yeah. We need communities back together and find something unique. And that's what we're doing, is trying to look at, I recently went to Harvard, and like you said, I think the one area, I'm still at Harvard because we couldn't graduate this November, but one of the areas Harvard looks at is say, what do you take the good of the old and take out the bad and turn it into something better, right? So when the circus was dieting, how did Circus Soleil be able to charge more, bring, than a typical circus and become a $100 million, multi-billion-dollar company by taking the good of the nostalgia of a circus and make it into adult entertainment that people wanted and enjoyed. And yet got rid of the bad, which was the smell of the animals and the inhumaneness of animals, right? Yeah. So I think that's what I'm getting the community to start thinking about, is like, we're only a tech company, but if we can sit there and say, let us help put this upside down, and then where do we bring corporations to help figure out how best to bring the teachers back to, that's the biggest thing that superintendents want right now. How do I get teachers back to want to teach when the vaccine comes out?
Yeah. And they're tired too. I feel for the teachers being thrown all this stuff too. And, I think this is why others need to get involved. We can't just leave it up to the educational employees and admin, Yeah.
They need help. They need you to relook at things. And so one, as a parent, how can I help bring other resources? It doesn't have to be me. The second part is this is a great place for entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
Zoom is not the best curriculum, platform for students. But I don't know that we've come up with many others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would sit there and say, if you can think of other ways that you can add value to the way education is being done from kindergarten to college, to, come start a company, start a little micro POC, a pilot, and see if you have the right ideas by testing it out and create some unique value add. It might only meet a niche of the needs for, let's say, 8th graders who are looking at career days, but it's still a niche that's needed. So that's how I say, as women, where can we provide that as an entrepreneur or as a connector or doing it ourselves to help create something in our community?
All of you listening, I want you to take in what Dao's saying, because it's when you look at this year as well, I know a lot of us were just seeing the disruption and the craziness, and it's just, driving us crazy. But there is so much opportunity at the same time. When you see the systems and frameworks that are being disrupted, they will never be the same, right? It'll be like I hate new normal, but kind of like that. When we're thinking going forward, things are going to be a little different, but we're recreating these. It's actually such an exciting time. When you yes. tune into that frequency, it's a higher frequency. But when you go there and think about all the reinvention, the good yep. disruption, like you said, not your favorite restaurant getting shut down. That's a bummer because that's happened here, right? But the good parts of this, like what you're saying, like let's reinvent what never really quite worked completely anyway. That's an entrepreneurial opportunity for people with different ideas, who are ready to go for it, who are ready to pull. A lot of companies too are looking for ways to help and get involved. You have a great idea. I mean, reach out to companies in your region and say, hey, why don't we get together and do this? I have the ideas. You guys maybe put your name behind it and some money. Yep. I'll pull in some educational experts and let's get this thing going.
There's grants and funds all over the place and people looking for it. So why not try it at a time where you have a chance to? It would be really hard to change the higher ed methodology and the way universities are being run. But today, I'll tell you, Harvard is struggling to figure out how to keep their most profitable business line, which is their executive education that I'm in, mm-hmm. to come and still participate virtually. Right? Yeah. $7,000 off of a $45,000 3-week program isn't going to help me come to want to come.
Right.
And study.
Right. Did you ever get to go on site? It's so beautiful there.
Oh, yeah. I've been in 2 out of my 3 programs. It's a 3-year program. So it's 141 CEOs from 41 countries.
Wow.
For 3 weeks, and we all live in a dorm. And I have been on site twice. My kids' grandparents on their father's side is actually from Boston. But it's wonderful. It's great. I love the community at Harvard. But, they are struggling to figure out how do we continue executive education at the value we were charging. I mean, look at if I had a kid, a freshman right now, paying $65,000, $80,000 to go to an Ivy League school, I'd be questioning it right now because they don't have the networks to meet the people they wanted to meet in person.
Yeah, it's just there's a lot of questioning going on. Exactly. What do you learn in there? I'm just curious. Did anything surprise you when you got into the executive education? Is it affirming of a lot of what you knew already, or is it some new stuff that you're really going to learn and use?
I think it's a little bit of both. It is definitely affirming that, you know more than you thought you know. But on the other hand, you are trying to learn, and what it forces you to do is become less of an operational CEO and more of a strategic CEO and investor. So more of the women, which is only less than 17% of the class, that go in there realize that most women who don't apply for this program say, I can't get away for 3 weeks. I can't leave my children, or I can't leave my work because I'm so much part of my business.
Interesting.
And it forced me to hire 3 new managers to run my business while I was away.
Wow. And in the end, that was a good thing?
In the end, it was a good thing. I lost money that year from a profit perspective, right? Because there's a ramp up time of all these high-end people you hire.
Yeah.
But in the long run, the next year, wow, we went from 12 million to 20 million in sales.
That's a long game. Mm-hmm.
And a 7x net income growth this year.
I love that. Dao, I'd love to, but before I ask my final question, can you share with everyone how they can follow what you're doing? Do you play on social? And also, I'm just dying to know, is there a book maybe in your future? I just had a little feeling.
There may be a book in the future. I think that'll be maybe 2 years or so from now, but I am on Instagram and I am on, LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. So find us in, Dao at Kaizen Tech Partners or Dao at Kaizen Tech for Twitter, or you'll find Kaizen Tech Partners on LinkedIn and Facebook.
So I'm putting you on the spot a bit because I forgot to mention this in our pre-chat, but just from your experience and the leader that you've become, could you share just 3 great pieces of advice with all the women listening? This could be quick tips or they can be longer pieces of advice, whatever you'd like.
Sure. I mean, I think one is believing in yourself more than anyone else. I think your biggest person who's keeping you away from succeeding is your head and what you're saying to yourself. And trust me, I've had it many times. I've had to have very supportive men and women around me keep telling me that I can be bigger and grow more, even though I might be happy at 20 million in sales and bootstrapped. Obviously, I didn't take any VC funding. So really believing in yourself and not letting the naysayers take you down, right? And question yourself, even if they think you're not a great leader or they don't like your approach. You've got to be your authentic self, and you've got to find that right company, that right way of living in business to feel good and feel good about what you're doing and proud of it. That's number one. Number 2 is, I don't really believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. And however you can integrate that to make sure that you're happy, I think people who put their lives into work only are hiding from something else. And whether that's your family and you don't have your own children or something, I think we need to be more than just about our business. And if we can make social entrepreneurship a thing in their business, I think it's important you try to do so. And the third is have fun. If you don't like what you're doing, change it. And no one saw me as a CEO 7 years ago. I was a head of sales, VP of sales, and one day turned on my office and said, I'm the CEO of Kaizen. What the hell is that? I didn't have the answers. I didn't know what Kaizen was going to be. Yet I didn't let that get in the way of me trying to figure that out over the next few months, nor disrupt my presence with people to say this is going to be something.
I love that. Dao, thank you for sharing your wisdom and advice and insight. And I'm just percolating with ideas now. I think you've probably inspired a lot of women listening to say, hey, you know what? I've been frustrated with some things in my area. I'm going to go look into doing some stuff and helping with a solution.
Even if it's in love, I'm going to tell you, people would say it's hard to date during COVID. I will tell you, I found my soulmate during COVID.
Ooh. Well, this is a whole other show. Now we're getting juicy. Now we're having fun. Yeah. How did that happen? Could you share a bit?
Yeah. I think part of it is also too, like, how do you make things, like you said, churn things around? I think that everyone worried in sales about not being able to take people out. The restaurants are closed. How do I take people to bars and do happy hours? You just got to get creative. I turned my living room into a speakeasy and rebought all my furniture in the living room. So how I met my soulmate, and I'm not, is my old customer who became a new customer just was sick of being at home for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And he was reaching out and texting me and said, you know what? I've seen your pictures going out to the sunset during COVID, and that's been like something you love. Would you mind meeting me out in this, ocean beach, and we'll just have a drink?
Mm-hmm. This was a customer? This was a client?
This was a customer in the past.
Scandal. Okay.
No, in the past, he was a customer.
Oh, that's sexy. And yeah.
We met out on the beach, had a bottle of Veuve. I brought some food. And because, he got tested every 2 weeks for COVID in his new role, we ended up just spending a lot of time together the next 4 or 5 months.
You went on lockdown. That's awesome.
So, I have to say, you don't have to do online dating to say, who do I trust? What don't I trust? It might be just around the corner and you don't know it, right? I think everything's possible during COVID. You just have to do it differently.
Oh, I love that. That's a beautiful note to end on. Very inspiring. Thank you so much, Dao. And we'll stay in touch. And thank you just for doing what you do. You're helping so many. You're a great role model. I mentioned on the pre-chat with you, but I want everyone to know that building this company and having this big business vision can go along with making an impact for something you see that really needs to be solved in the world. So thank you for doing what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Allie.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.